You guys, welcome to Truth Hurts Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is going to be a very special show because not only are we teaching you the differences between a legal and lawful court order, and it doesn't matter if you are in a criminal case, it doesn't matter if you're in a civil case, a traffic court, it doesn't matter. Every single case coming in and out of these courts, for the majority, from what I've seen, are absolutely fraud. They're no longer legal and they're no longer lawful if they are not adjudicated properly and signed off and endorsed by the court. Now, Now, there's a difference between the court and the judge. The judge is not the court. The judge is a officer of the court. You guys, my name is Malibu Dallas. Thank you for joining us. If you are looking at gaining more information in regards to your case, either a CPS case, family court case, criminal case, it doesn't matter. These are all going to apply because why? It's all revolving around constitutional law. Constitutional law supersedes policies, procedures, codes, statutes, you name it. It supersedes that no matter what. And it doesn't matter if we're going off of the state's constitution. Doesn't matter if we're going off the original constitution. In fact, your state's constitution has to align with the original constitution. So when I'm going to show you the differences, and I touched a little bit about in that TikTok video, you saw it. This is what looks to be, if you didn't know any better, a legal and lawful signature. You have the judge's name, you have the judge's title, and you have a little scribble for the signature. But if you didn't know any better, you would think that that was a legal and lawful signature, and you would go about your day and go, great, I have a court order. Well, in fact, no. What you basically have right there is toilet paper. Because it doesn't matter what's inside of that court order. It literally does not matter what that court order lists. As long as it's signed like this and it's not endorsed by the court, it's not legal or lawful. It's basically toilet paper, okay? What is a lawful court order look like? Again, we touched base in the TikTok video. So you have your judge's signature, you have the seal of the court, you have the judge's name, and you have the judge's title, and you have the judge's jurisdiction. All of those are what you need in order for a court order to be legal and lawful. You also need to find out where the clerk of court signature is. Even if it has all of these issues, it has all of this. It has the judge's signature, the seal, the judge's name, the jurisdiction, it has all that. If it does not have the clerk's signature, that order is no longer legal or lawful. So you have to have all of those elements inside of that court order in order for it to be of the court. Doesn't matter if it's criminal court, civil court, whatever. All writs, okay? Let me show you this. Let's see if I can find it here real quick. I think this is it. Yeah. So if you look right here, Title 28 U.S. Code 1691, seal and test of process. All, that's a big word, all writs and processes issuing from a court of the United States. If you notice how it says of a court of the United States, it doesn't say civil court, criminal court, or anything. It's encompassing of all courts. All writs and processes issuing from a court of the United States shall be under the seal of the court and signed by the clerk thereof. You guys, we are trying to get you to understand that just because you have something that looks like it's legal and lawful doesn't mean that it is. You could have the judge issuing you everything under the sun against you in a court order, civil court, CPS court, criminal court, it doesn't matter. If it's not correctly endorsed by the court and coming from the court and of the court, You guys, I hate to break it to you, but it's just toilet paper. Okay. And what can you do if you do come across that? What can you do to mitigate, and find remedy uh, for that process if it's not being adjudicated correctly and issued correctly? Okay, well that's a due process violation. Okay, it's abuse of power, and obviously when that happens, the judge lacks jurisdiction. Okay, you can actually file a motion to dismiss and vacate the order simply based on the fact that they're not being the court orders are not even of the court. Okay. Now I'm telling you all this not as a lawyer. Okay, I'm not a lawyer. Everything that we teach you here, everything that we talk about is basically for educational purposes. If you are looking at getting legal advice, I suggest you track down a legal and competent lawyer who knows what they're talking about in your area, which in my opinion, that's going to be pretty hard because I don't find very many competent lawyers out there. So if you are looking at your court order, you need to find out if it's a legal and lawful court order. Once again, not legal or lawful. You want to find your court order that looks exactly like this. Okay. You guys, I'm going to bring on a special guest today. I wanted to touch base just in the beginning of the show of how these judges are defrauding you and continuing to defraud you in the process of basically trafficking your children through family court and CPS court. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about CPS and family court and these so-called judges. And in my opinion, they're not even real judges. They're administrative personnel acting as judges. And that's fraud. Okay. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons why you're not seeing a court order actually issued in their judicial capacity, because administrative judges, I don't think they have the power to do court order in a judicial capacity. Now, yes, a judge has the authority to operate in his judicial capacity or their administrative capacity. But in my opinion, now I could be wrong. You can argue the fact that we might not have had any legitimate judges since the late 1700s, the late 1800s. So you might, that's a little something that you might want to do some research on. But today's show is multifaceted. Today's show is, we're not only just teaching you how to recognize a faulty court order and to fight it and to bring, shed light on it. Today, we are literally talking about how the states are committing fraud on a mass level and even treason, guys. Treason. Some people are going to argue the fact that what we are about to show you doesn't constitute treason. I argue, and my special guest will certainly argue, just the opposite. Okay? When you are actively instructing your state employees to circumvent the Constitution in a manner of which we're about to show you, it definitely constitutes treason. And every single state is involved in it. Every single state. We are going to be presenting evidence on a few states today, but I guarantee you, if you do the same research in your state, you're going to find similar results. So let me bring on my special guest today, guys. His name is Gunnar, and he is insanely smart. He's been doing a ton of research, and the amount of work that he has been doing, not just in Tennessee, but for the last week, he's been reviewing policies and procedures for almost every single state. And I am very impressed with what he's been able to come up with. Excuse me. I would, in fact, at one point when I get my organization up and running, my 501c3, I would love to have Gunnar and his wife to come on board to the program and help us do legal research full time, because one of my biggest goals is to be able to travel around the country and teach you guys face to face, maybe on bigger seminars, training programs, and watch you grow. Watch you go from a very frightened, scared, emotional parent who doesn't think that they have the authority or the power to stand up for your own rights and operate in court by yourself and fight for your children, and just watch you do a 180. Watch you do a 180 going from that to somebody who is so insanely powerful that you don't even recognize yourself, after the training, because you're going to feel so empowered. You're going to know your rights. You're going to learn how to stand on your rights, and you're going to learn how to stand on those rights in court. Right? That's our biggest goal right now, is to make sure that the American people start learning their rights, because if you don't know your rights in the eyes of the law, you don't have any rights. And that is so insanely scary, guys. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my special guest, Gunner, and his lovely wife, Rose. I'm going to have them tell a little bit about their story on why they're here and what they've been experiencing. And then we're going to dive into how exactly these states are committing fraud. And you're going to be surprised. Okay. So everybody, welcome in Gunner and Rose. They are living in Tennessee, actually, and they have firsthand knowledge of a lot of the stuff happening in Tennessee. So how you doing, Gunner?
Doing good. Glad to be here. Glad to kind of get the word out and spread the information, the knowledge, and empower the people. And that's what this country's been founded on, is we the people, that I think the people have forgotten. We're the ones that wrote the contract, not the government. It's not the opposite. And people need to understand the Constitution itself is a contract. It's contract law between us and our representatives. And understand, we're the ones that wrote it. We're the ones that enforce it. And we've been misinformed of things, of like words like democracy, when we don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. There's been misinformation, misguided. Why? Because presidential orders have allowed misinformation to go out all the way back from the Obama term, that allowed this misinformation to be publicized to most of the people. And so basically you're getting rhetoric or anything they want to tell you, and they're not telling you the truth, and they're hiding everything. And they're able to do
Obama, when Obama took office, he actually passed a what do you call it?
Executive
order.
Mm-hmm.
Issuing and reestablishing propaganda within inside of the United States. And that's where all that comes from.
Absolutely. And the biggest issue to the core of it actually comes down to is, one, we have become so codependent on our system that it's become so scary that we have traded our rights and our freedoms for being comfortable. Why? Because even the poorest of people have a phone connected to the internet. I mean, if you really think about that, to be entertained and distracted. People got to understand the Colosseum in Rome wasn't built to do nothing more than to distract the people from what the government was doing. Right. I mean, that's history now. And I love history because we go a lot into history, where it came from and how it was formed. The original part of CPS throughout history was designed after the World Wars, is to have a place for orphans to go, that people that had lost their family during the World Wars, and there was nothing there. It was some rich institutions out of New York City that actually started it, and that began to grow throughout the states. But then somebody saw an opportunity to make money. Now, here's the sad part. Most people don't know. Every single one of these states, Department of Children and Family Services, every single one of them ran a sanitarium in their state. If you want some dark research, look at what sanitariums did and why Ronald Reagan shut them down. It's some horror stories, people. I mean, horror. I mean, the worst of the worst you could imagine. There ain't even a horror movie that's that bad compared to people I know that have even been to the one outside of Nashville, Tennessee, that we had here. And the nightmare stories that made national news. But it's scary that they've run. And once we cut them off from that, they had to look for another source of income. So what did they get into? Child Protective Services. Do you know every state, CPS or DCS only gets involved with families, not individuals or persons? Those automatically go to the police department. And it's in their policies and procedures.
In Texas, CPS can't even accept anonymous calls anymore. You know, the whole anonymous, referral coming into their hotline. CPS can't even take those in anymore. They all of your calls have to be rerouted to a local or state police agency in order for them to filter out any kind of fraud, any kind of misfiling, because there's too many people who are using these hotlines and these referral programs to weaponize CPS. Oh, you piss off your neighbor or whatever, and before you know it, you got a falsified report being called onto you, and now you have to deal with CPS for 18 months, 2 years, or whatever. If you don't know the law, if you don't know your rights, and that's a scary thing.
Actually, that's a socialism program that more recently that China has involved. And we've seen that in the news to where they have somebody go around and evaluate you in your community. And if you don't hit the community standards by the reviewer, you get docked. It's the same program in a different country. It's got, same boss as the old boss, the new boss is. It's nothing different. They're doing this in other countries. They just have different names for it. Comply, comply, comply. There's some states
right.
Once you're in their system, you don't get out.
And you're going to see that word comply a lot. If you don't comply, if you don't consent or you don't comply, we're going to take extra action.
Listen, there's a state out there that says in their policies and procedures, they go beyond the court systems. Just because the court has ruled doesn't mean their services stop. You must comply.
Right.
You got
Gunner, you have your lovely wife Rose with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, just a little bit of what you're experiencing or have experienced in Tennessee, and why you're doing the fight that you're doing?
Well, what had happened is we had gotten married. I have older children. She had younger children, but we have 3 children in the home that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Neurodivergent. Now, my wife has a degree in psychology and early childhood development. In other words, she has the same stuff as these caseworkers do. So she's very familiar with the proficiencies, their policies, procedures, their psychological warfares, the whole 9 yards.
So she can just go through all those reports and just pick them apart easily.
Oh, no, she went further than that. She figured out how they were trafficking children and stealing your children and looking good to the public and the judges.
Sounds about right.
So they take, and she's in the interview with the kids and stuff. And in Tennessee, if you give up your kids, that's a Class C felony. So in front of
so you're saying in Tennessee, if you relinquish your authority or your parental rights just on your own
to your parents,
that's a felony.
To your uncle, anything else, it's a Class C felony. That is a child abandonment. This was done by a CPS worker right in front of a sheriff's deputy, and he did nothing trying to coerce her into doing that. Now, when you do that, they run across the street to the criminal courtroom and the DA and go, they just abandoned their child, charge them with a felony. Now they can go back to the family court and go, well, she's under felony conviction now, Your Honor. We want full possession of the kid. See how quick that worked?
Wow.
Got your kid now.
Seems like that's pretty streamlined. That's pretty streamlined, right?
They use a lot of mental, emotional manipulation to try to coerce you into it. I was attacked with a lot of propaganda. It's our job to protect children. And they didn't like it that I knew it was my job to protect my children. But, it's our job to protect children. We need to make sure they're in a safe place. Who do you have that they could go to while we sort this out? Who will take your children? Do you have family? Do you have a church group? Do you have who do you have in your life that will take care of your children while we help you sort through this?
State employee coercing someone to commit a Class C felony.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Wow.
Now you see how they look so good to everybody in public in the courts.
Just makes your stomach curl, doesn't it? Just like, it's like,
it gets worse. Then you have caseworkers, and you can bring up the one with the forgery. The caseworker.
Which one is that out of Tennessee?
That IEP, that I blacked out some of the information there.
I don't think I have that one
yesterday. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I don't have that one up here in the studio.
Okay. So we had hard evidence that and she was there and witnessed it, and she had an advocate friend of hers there helping her during the time with the CAC. Well, we have neurodivergent children, and they all vary on the different spectrum and been diagnosed this and that. Now, understanding too, she lost her husband to a heart attack, okay, to a COVID-19 lockdown with children by herself. That's enough trauma alone, let alone moving all the way across the country from California to move across the country and do all this with the lockdown, this and that. And now you're trying to deal with, your healing and your loss and, just trying to just go through that as well as your kids and not understanding what the traumas were or anything else. But you're talking about a mental health case. Our caretaker or our mental health professional was there and did the initial reports and lowered it to the lowest one, knowing the child's information. Okay.
Long story short, we dealt with a mandated report that I was involved in because I knew it had to be done, and we didn't want to get in trouble if somebody found out, and then it hadn't been reported, and then it turned into a caseworker showing up at our home, entering the home without my explicit permission, written or spoken. He was gone. It was his household, so we had to deal with that.
Premarital asset. The home was a premarital asset that I alone have property rights to.
Yes.
That I had never got permission or a warrant to enter my home, nor was I ever notified.
Yes. And then to a forensic interview, coerced forensic interviews for our other children. And then we were basically thrown into the system, separated and thrown into the system. He had a child removed from our home completely. My children, by an act of God, stayed with me. And we are actually, today is 2 years.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with this for 2 years today.
Wow.
And you're talking about like my son was interviewed by the CAC with no permission from the parents. And then he went on the stand and lied and said he got permission. Here's the problem. I have evidence, hard evidence of my side of the phone conversation, and my phone records. I only spoke to him once that day, and I denied that I wanted services, and I didn't agree to anything, and he still signed it.
So we're dealing with coercion, forgery, kidnapping.
Coercion, intimidation, threats, extortion, kidnapping.
Threats, yes. Yeah. I was threatened several
times. That's 5 felonies within inside a couple seconds.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. And this is how they operate when you don't want to be compliant and do everything they ask of you. And this is how.
And that's the thing is people have got to understand the word compliant is not even a thing when it comes to CPS.
No.
These agencies don't have any legal or lawful authority backing them up unless they have a court order. There is no law in any state. I don't care what state you live in. There is no law that says you have to comply or consent or aid them in their investigation against you unless there is a legal and lawful court order.
Unfortunately, they use a lot of manipulation tactics. I didn't know going into it. We did not know going into it. We've had to educate ourselves all the way through to where we are now. And
by the way, there are states that do publish. They do have that right.
They do. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Let's see. Pick
a state.
Yeah, let's pick a state. Let's see. We have my case has been going on almost a year. Yeah, see, and that's typical, Jennifer. Is that cases will they will draw out their case as long as they possibly can in order to continue to collect federal funding. It's not about the safety of your children.
Nope.
It never has been, and it never will be. Your state CPS agencies, your family courts, it's all about federal funding and how long we can actually keep the case open. They don't care about the safety of your children. They don't care about anything about your family. They will break the bond and they will separate you. They will destroy your family, all for federal funding. So I've seen cases that have been opened up for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So, I mean, It's really sad. I mean, it's really sad to see that.
Listen, I appreciate the comments you gave me earlier about just doing research and some of the different things that I do. Listen, there's a term that a lot of people need to understand. It's called autodidact. What it means is you have the ability to self-teach, self-learn. In other words, I can read the book, understand, comprehend, and execute it, but I don't need a piece of paper that says I read the book and get my little gold star. There are so many people out there. Listen, my grandfather had a 6th grade education and was the general foreman on the Chicago Skyway. Super stuff's built. It doesn't take that. It takes experience. It takes the ability to learn. And that's what half of this is that I think Dallas and I both push is we want you to be autodidact. We want you to be your biggest advocate. We want you to learn and understand for yourselves. Why? Because it doesn't help it if it comes around again. You've got somebody else trying to fight your battles. You are your best advocate and your best pro se and defender of your families.
Yes.
100%. And that's what I teach everybody. It's like, listen, you don't need a lawyer. Lawyer's very first sworn oath and duty is to the state and to the court, not you as a client. I don't care if you spend $50,000 on an attorney. I don't care if it's a court-appointed attorney. Court-appointed attorneys are way worse. But every single attorney in this country has a very first sworn oath and duty to the state and to the court. Okay, it's a corpus
right there is your guardian ad litems.
Corpus Juris Secundum. Corpus Juris Secundum, Volume 7, subsection 76. Okay, it states that every attorney's duty is to the state and to the court, not the client. I want you guys to understand that you guys are far more powerful representing yourself either as a pro se litigant or represent yourself as a sui juris litigant, you know, in your proper personal, you know, forum. Never refer to yourself as a parent or anything like that. You are a living woman. You are a living man. You are not a corporate fiction. Okay. Some of you out there might be thinking, oh my God, what, he's going into some crazy stuff. But I'm telling you, I'm being 100% honest with you. These systems are looking at you as a corporation, as a dead entity. I am a living person. I am a living person. I have blood and running through my veins. I have a soul. I'm living on the land. I have more power representing myself in court because I have a voice. The reason why these court systems want you to have an attorney is because now the judge, the CPS agents, the CPS's lawyers, your attorney, they're all paid by the courts. They all work together. Oops, I'm sorry. They all work together to manipulate the case in a way that they want to see it go. And you're too incompetent to speak to your case. The judge doesn't want to hear you. The judge wants nothing to do with you because you have an attorney. Your attorney will speak for you. And I guarantee you the majority of those attorneys, they're not going to do a damn thing on your case.
I got one for you.
It suits you to learn the law, learn a little bit about court procedure, and fight for your children yourself.
Our first hearing in juvenile court, during the hearing, I actually brought up constitutional issues to them saying, this is not legal. This is not applicable. It's not here. This, this is unconstitutional. That magistrate literally said on the record, we don't deal with constitutional issues in this courtroom. I go, isn't that your first oath there, Jack? So we're just throwing the Constitution out. I'm glad that you made that clear that family courts do not follow the Constitution. I'm glad that you put that out there.
I'm going to show you guys something. And before we move on, I'm going to show you guys something. This is a 14-page PDF that I put together. Okay. CPS fraud upon the court. Let's look at the purple section real quick, guys. American jurisprudence. We're talking about the Constitution versus state statutes. Now, if we read this, if you can see it, it says in quotes, if the Constitution prescribed one rule and the statute another in a different rule, it is the duty, guys, it is the duty of the courts to declare that the Constitution and not the statutes govern the cases before them for judgment. when you say that a judge was telling you that we don't go by the Constitution here, well, he's violating his own laws, his own regulations put forth in the American jurisprudence. If you don't know what American jurisprudence, guys, is it's a legal encyclopedia showing, teaching lawyers and judges the actual freaking law. And it states it right there in American jurisprudence. You have to adjudicate your case by the Constitution, not statute.
Now, the importance of the Chevron that comes into this is that they didn't have to follow that, or they could take and decide for themselves what applied to them and what didn't. With the reversal of the Chevron doctrine, that means they now have to go back to the way it was supposed to be. But you got to understand, they've been doing it for over 40 years, which means
since 1984,
everybody is used to, I'll interpret it however I want. Well, the Supreme Court now, and now here's going to be the balance in the system of kicking it back, of saying, Your Honor, you can't do that anymore, because that's been overturned. You have to follow this. But once again, how many cases have they already taken and seen? Like in our state of Tennessee, you can't commit treason and sedition against your things and your courts be legit. Therefore, every court up to 2016 of December is considered null and void by the Constitution itself.
It's even crazier. It's even crazier when you learn that your CPS case has been built on fraud from the very beginning, because a caseworker cannot submit an affidavit into court under the penalties of perjury stating that the allegations are true in fact, and I have personal firsthand knowledge. That cannot happen. When they submit that document into court, they are now submitting a fraudulent document into court, which means it's fraud upon the court. Check this out. Here we go. If a judge willingly and knowingly ignores signs of fraud and he still adjudicates the case based on that fraud upon the court, the judge now loses subject matter jurisdiction. The judge cannot adjudicate a case on fraud. Every single order, if it's legal, lawful, or not, is void. And every single judge and every single CPS case in this country is being built and operated and adjudicated upon fraud upon the court. So, you guys, let's let's look at the Tennessee. The whole entire reason why we are starting this off is because of what we found in the Tennessee Clients' Rights Handbook. Okay. Now, I touched base on this a little bit in the intro on the video, but I want you guys to understand that it goes a lot further than that. Okay, so let's go to page 6, and I want Gunner to narrate this for you.
I may have to pull that up on my side over here. You're a little small.
No, right here. If you can read that, it's going to be bigger on their screens. But if you can read this right here on the second paragraph down.
Okay. At the onset of the investigation, the investigator will hold an initial interview with your child to determine their immediate safety. This interview will take place away from the alleged abuser, either at the home, school, or in another safe location, and your consent is not required for an interview to take place. That goes against federal case law. Several federal case laws.
Your consent is not required for an interview to take place.
In your home. Private property. Matter of fact, there's a federal judge that turned around and said, you can't come inside. Matter of fact, here's a little nugget. That particular judge said, too, that these CPS people you have to have a warrant, or an emergency or extenuating circumstances are the only two ways a CPS agent can enter. Anything else is coercion, he said. You can't even give permission to enter, as some states even say you can. Goes against federal case law. They've defined it. It's a clear violation of both the 4th and 14th Amendment, and quotes older case law, and even gets onto the people that had this go on to them, chastise them, say, you should have known better. Would you want somebody just coming in your house and doing this and that as freely as they want to? No. That's why we have the Constitution. So basically, when
Yep.
they enter the home, they're technically, with no warrant, no better than somebody breaking and entering in your home trying to kidnap your children. Anybody heard of Castle Doctrine?
Mm-hmm.
Second Amendment.
Yep.
What did you do? I defended my home against somebody breaking and entering with no warrant, coming to steal my children and verbalized it.
Yep. And you guys, this is right from the Tennessee Clients' Rights Handbook, and it was published. If you can see there, the state published it in December of 2016. They're publishing their own acts of treason, and what they do is they're literally telling you that we are enforcing and instructing our workers, our public servants,
Paying them
to circumvent the Constitution, and we're going to pay them to do so with federal funding
and state funding.
And state funding.
By the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, it meets the definition.
Guys, if you understood, like if you truly fucking comprehended what we are saying right now, your mind would literally just